So last week, we covered the top-rated episode of the 1960s Spider-Man cartoon series, and it was fun and interesting to go look back at the Wallcrawler's first venture into cartoons. Over a decade later, in 1981, Marvel would release their next Spider-Man cartoon series, and this is perhaps the series I'm least familiar with, and I feel like that's true of most of the Spider-Man fanbase, or for those in my generation. It's rarely ever mentioned in the pantheon of Spider-Man cartoons, and most people usually jump from the 60s Spider-Man cartoon to the 90s cartoon series. So I'm excited to take a look at a more pop culturally obscure series that didn't retain as much relevance years later, and see how it holds up. If you're new to this channel, this is a series where I take a look at the top rated episode of a particular series or TV show. So without further ado, let's check out the best episode of the 1980s Spider-Man cartoon. The episode we're checking out today is titled The Capture of Captain America, which off the bat sounds interesting, and I can see why it ranks so high. Crossover episodes tend to be interesting and fun. From the jump, we're greeted with an interesting opening and a theme song I don't really recall hearing before. Everyone's used to the infamous 60s soundtrack, and some of the following series have become iconic in their own right, but this one seemingly faded into obscurity. It's also pretty funky and just an overall funny theme song. The character design and animation is what surprised me the most, coming from the last series I reviewed. It makes sense that they'd improve, but it's really nice to see a more fluid and varied set of animations. Likewise, the new John Romita Sr. style character designs modernize the character and resembles the updated look of the time. He's more muscular and has a fuller frame, compared to the skinnier Steve Ditko look of the 60s. Both are great designs and feel appropriate in their respective eras. Peter's design is reflective of the 70s and 80s, opting for a less preppy look. He sports a more modern hairstyle as well, which the character would keep throughout the 80s and 90s. Peter's also progressed from his high school days to a university student, with a job working at the Daily Bugle with boss J. Jonah Jameson, and friends Robbie Robertson and Betty Brant, who make frequent appearances throughout the series. JJ's depiction in this series is very faithful to the comics and what we've seen over the years. The voice actor does a great job without going too over the top, something that's easy to do with this character. JJ expresses his admiration for Captain America while managing to tear down Spider-Man in the process, claiming the former is a true American hero. In that spirit, Jonah wants to celebrate Captain America by dedicating a day to him and having a speech and parade, which the others agree would be a nice idea. Red Skull gets wind of this and expresses his desire to destroy Captain America, and sees the special day as the perfect opportunity. And aw, how cute. Red Skull has a little Captain America toy. Oh, he broke the head off. He means business. Back in New York, Peter and Betty head to the parade and get ready to take photos of the event. However, unbeknownst to them, JJ has been gassed and knocked out. Captain America arrives, and as his speech begins, Peter's spidey sense goes off, and soon, we see the Jameson standing behind Cap. Doesn't sound like the JJ we know. He loses his disguise and reveals himself to be the Red Skull. As Cap battles the Red Skull, who he hasn't seen in years, Peter dashes off, claiming to need more film, and switches into his costume. Spider-Man swings to the scene to ambush the Red Skull, but a dazed Cap tosses his shield towards the Red Skull and accidentally hits an approaching Spider-Man, who gets the wind knocked out of him and falls to the floor. The Red Skull's ship arrive, and man is that thing cool. It looks a bit alien to me. A crane lowers and grabs an incapacitated Captain America, and the ship heads off. As Spider-Man gets back up, the attendees of the parade blame him for Cap's kidnapping, and Spider-Man flees before they get any more hostile. Word spreads of Spider-Man's accused crime, and we get a glimpse of this kid. Yeah, this newspaper kid doesn't sound like a kid to me.
Read it in the Bugle how Spider-Man helped the Red Skull capture Captain America. Read all about it.
Spider-Man contemplates what's going on and how he'll get Cap back, but some angry citizens find him and again chase him away. Spider-Man realizes that with the entire city angry at him, perhaps he'll have a better chance at saving Cap by donning a disguise. The show makes a nice little nod here to Stan Lee by having Peter visit a costume shop featuring various characters he's contributed to. And then we see Peter don a comically oversized Captain America costume. Peter heads to a nearby airport, and Bootleg Geraldo here comments on Cap's loose outfit. outfit, but agrees to take him to Red Skull's hideout as a favor for America's hero. As Peter makes his way to Red Skull's hideout, we see the Red Skull's ultimate plan, which is to utilize a mind-switching machine developed by his henchmen, which will place the Red Skull's mind in Captain America's body, thus giving him what he needs to rule the world. In typical bad guy fashion, Red Skull demonstrates how the machine works. Meanwhile, Peter reaches the castle and sneaks in, but sets off the security alarm in the process, which results in giant armored robots emerging and attacking Peter. He manages to defeat both of them and finds his way down to the Skull's lair, which happens to be hidden behind a bookshelf, again in typical bad guy fashion. Red Skull's henchman Neiman pleads to abandon this horrific plan as he never intended his creation to be used for such horrible reasons, but the Skull ridicules him and demands he begins the mind-switching process. However, before the process can complete, Spider-Man finds Cap's shield and tosses it towards Cap, who kicks it at the machine and pauses the mind transfer. Spider-Man jumps in and removes the restraints from a tired Captain America, and the two fight the Skull, with Spider-Man defeating him and tossing him back into the chair. Then, in a stunning turn of events, the arm restraints enclose around Red Skull's hand, and we see Neiman has done it, and turns back on the machine, which pretty much lobotomizes Red Skull because there was no body to receive his mind. Neiman walks over to the lifeless body and comments that this was the only decent act he's ever done, and that the Red Skull shouldn't have called him ugly and all those other names. This was a dark and ending that I wasn't expecting at all. Later, Cap and Spider-Man appear at a parade thrown for Captain America's re-emergence, and Cap tells Spider-Man that perhaps he'll get his own day, and Spider-Man declines because it'd mean he'd have to shake hands with J. Jonah Jameson. Spidey then heads out and salutes America's hero. I really enjoyed this episode and thought it was a great way to experience this series. I can easily see why this episode was a high note. I really love the Spider-Man design because it strikes a good balance of making him look like an adult without appearing as muscular as, say, Captain America. John Romita Sr. is one of my favorite comic artists and one of the most iconic Spider-Man artists, so it's cool to see his designs in animated form. I also love the varied swinging animations with rarely any reused maneuvers. Obviously, it's not going to look like it was made today, but it feels far more modern and less stiff than its predecessor, which again is not to knock on the previous series, but rather highlight the improvements that have been made. Also, this Spider-Man has non-stop jokes. Every few minutes, he manages to get a joke or one-liner off, and I love it. I know some people don't like that aspect of Spider-Man or find it annoying, but that has been a staple of the character since day one. Depending on the iteration, he literally rivals Deadpool in terms of comedy, with obviously more PG or PG-13 centric joke. This series was a step in the right direction, and I'm eager to check out more episodes of this series. I also really look forward to checking out the next Spider-Man series, Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, which actually premiered on the same exact date as this series. I know that takes a different direction, so I'm excited to revisit that one. It actually got a lot more reruns on TV during my childhood than this show did, and I think more people remember that series than this one. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe, as it helps me reach even more Spidey fans. Also, leave a comment down below on what series you'd like to see me tackle in the future. I'm Khalid, and I'll see you guys in the next one.